Hey, how's it going, Brad?
It's going great, man. Thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate you fitting me in your schedule. I gotta say, man, you're playing. I saw, I've been seeing it for a while on Instagram, and right off the bat, you really caught my eye. You really have like a unique sound and like an amazing feel. Um, and I, I I was seeing a lot of cool stuff on Instagram, but what made you stick out to me was when I heard Bill Burr talking about you after your SNL appearance.
Thank you. Nah, I
Yeah.
appreciate the love and everything that you said. I'm just thankful to be working and moving around during these times. We're in the pandemic still, whether people want to believe it or not.
Yeah.
um, but I'm just thankful. I mean, this was not my first time on SNL. I actually done it with Jack, 2012 for the Blunderbuss album. And the crazy thing was that was our premiere, as the two bands, because Jack, he toured with an all female band and an all male band, and his vision was to basically, you know, put together put together a band of everybody that's been a part of the Blunderbuss album, and minus a few of the male band members. I definitely played a role on the Blunderbuss record, and that was our very first show, SNL 2012. So it was a dream come true, to do it then, and randomly, to do it again last year was just, I was not expecting that. On my I literally was on my way to Planet Fitness to work out. So the gyms were still open up in Nashville, during that time, and I think I had just left the Rivergate Mall. It's a mall in Nashville. I think it's in the Madison area, and Jack normally texts me, but this time he's FaceTime me. I've never, this is my first time, you know, receiving a FaceTime call from him. We just text each other, but he called me on a FaceTime, and I was in a mall. I had to like go somewhere, private. You know what I'm saying? He was
Yeah.
he was like, "What are you doing right now?" He was like, "You got a minute?" And I told him, I was actually on my way to the gym, and he was like, "Well, could you go to a quiet place?" So I walked outside and got in my car, and I FaceTimed in the back, and he told me, what was going on. I guess that they had, something happened with them. Anyway, to make a long story short, he said he got invited, and he wanted to know, if I was free, and if I could do the SNL, and he was like, if you're available, we need to rehearse tonight. So my
Wow.
gym plans was canceled.
Yeah. That's
and,
great.
and, and,
Oh, go on.
and the crazy thing about it, not to cut you off, was we had to get COVID tested.
Yeah.
So it was like all these moving parts. So if anybody from Jack's team, he doesn't travel alone. Like, he travel, with his engineer, whoever, works on the engineering side, the mixing side, and all these moving parts. So we all literally had to try to find a place to get COVID testing, right? And we literally had to do that in a 24-hour span. So it was like all these moving parts. But to make a long story short, it was blessed to be able to go back on SNL, and I actually hadn't worked with Jack. I think the last thing I had did with him, he came up with these pedals, Th1rt3en pedals, like guitar pedals. I think we may have done that maybe 2018 or 19, if I'm not mistaken. That was the last time I've done with something with Jack. But as far as like a performance, like a show performance, it was like, I think 2015 was my last. So it was just very cool to get that call, from him, and to be back on SNL. It was a lot of magical things happen. I feel like the universe, like it was meant for us to do that for various reasons. But yeah, it was blessed. It was blessed.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine how stressful that kind of thing has to be to get it all to come together so last minute. But it was an amazing performance. I mean, I loved that episode. I loved Bill Burr's set that he did, and like I said, I was excited to hear him shout you out. I know he's like into drums, but if anyone deserves the praise, like I said, you really set a new style for a lot of drummers out there for a long time now. And I would say with this new project you got going, you're kind of doing the same thing because it's a really unique vibe. This band 13 that you've got going now. Would you say it's accurate to describe it as almost like a horror theme to it, or what would you call the imagery that you're using to convey the images on this album.
Well, yes. Well, for the art cover, I mean, it's a lot of messages. It's a whole lot of messages. You know, yeah. So, basically, we had I don't want to, I don't want to give off the wrong information. I know Pharoahe will probably be the best, but from, if you look at it, basically, the country, like the United States, we definitely did exorcism. When we had another president in office, there was a lot of things that came to the forefront, and basically the album was just to shine light on uglies that we've been dealing with, just not within the president that was in the office at the time, but just for years, and just exposing, it's not so much of a horror, but it's just everything can't always be good, everything can't always be.
No, absolutely. I mean,
we don't live in that kind of world, you know what I'm saying? And there's a lot of things through the pandemic that were brought to the light. You had the Black Lives Matter movement, just things that just was not really a good look. There's rules and things that's been, and going on for decades, and was something we just was hoping to be a vessel to show people like, yo, let's rethink how we treat our brother and sister. Like, this is not really cool. Like, it's like a lot. It's just a message. It's a message in the music, a message in the artwork, and I think the artwork was geared towards imagery of some vibes, that was going on, just to say the least.
Yeah.
And, yeah. So basically, we just wanted to shine some light and just try to change the narrative. Look for ways to just say, hey, I feel like the pandemic happened for a reason. We needed to really go within and look at ourselves and to see how can we, as a human person, go about treating our neighbor. Like, just as, we all have red blood at the end of the day. You know what I'm saying? It's not a race thing, but we all bleed the same way, and we got to just try to look for ways, to change the narrative. So that's what we were hoping to do with the album. So any of the imagery, just like we watch Exorcist movie, that's when you go to church, you have the pastor, people praying over people to pray the spirits off of them and to get the demons. So this album was hopefully for that, to be a prayer, to pray against the demonic forces, and when you do that, all them demons and spirits, they get demonstrated. So that's pretty much what we were trying to do, use our album to be exorcism, if that makes any sense.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. I mean,
that's the best way I can answer that question.
Yeah. No, I think that the political messages that Pharoahe was rapping about on the album, I mean, I think they were very poignant. I think it was clear that you were talking about, the state of turmoil in the country and some of the issues that have come up in race relations. But I think that more so I was curious just of what the influence for that darker imagery was beyond the metaphorical message, but more so like the artistical influence behind it. But I think it all comes together in a really unique image that it really it's a really strong image that represents the album. I think the album itself is so cohesive and sounds so good to deliver that message. But would you say going forward for the band, that's going to be like part of the image? I mean, there's just like classic darker symbolism, like the band is called 13, an unlucky number. There's a song called 666, like just classic darker symbolism. That, do you think that'll be staying with the band going forward, or that's more of a part of the concept of the album?
That's definitely a Pharoahe question. Like I said, I don't want to talk out of turn.
Okay, yeah.
This is Pharoahe's vision, and I'm just thankful to be a part of it. But just I don't want to give too much away. I know we're working on the next one right now, and I think the next one, hopefully, if I'm not mistaken, is going to be geared on more of the light side of things. Now, so I always tell people not to judge a book by its cover. When they see titles like 666 Exorcism, it's like 666. Although when I came up just seeing that word or hearing that, it's associated with like a bad reputation, but the 666 it was basically a spinoff of 6-word sentences. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so a lot of times people just like, and I may have described that wrong, but like I said, Pharoahe would be the go-to. But the thing is, like, that's the thing with the album. Like, don't judge a book by its cover. Like, when you see the titles, like, hear and see it out. Like, listen to Pharoahe, listen to what he's saying. that's the best way that I can counter, attack any type of. But I think going forward, now I got to be honest. Now some of the stuff, when the imagery that I would see, because a lot of times we didn't, as a band member. Shout out to Marcus Machado. He's the guitarist in the band, and myself. We're just a trio. A lot of times, because Pharoahe was a visionary, we didn't always understand where he was going with some of these things. Like like when the palindrome art cover came back, I was actually a little annoyed, because I'm like, yo, like I never personally want to be, as a brand, have a brand touch anything on a negative side of things, or anything that's dark, because I definitely feel like I want to contribute to be a vessel. I'm a believer. I believe in God and Jesus Christ the Son. Like I still have the undertone, and a lot of times I want to definitely represent. Although we're human beings, I mean, I'm not perfect. I make mistakes like the next person, but as far as like what I want to give off in the world, I want to always try to give out a positive vibration, because we have enough of that dark side. So just seeing the imagery of like although I do like horror movies, I still didn't want to be associated with anything dealing with skulls or any type of death. So I was kind of agitated, but I personally have to like look beyond my thoughts and not judge Pharaoh's, and it just made sense. Like the way that he broke it down, I was like, okay, like, and I know I'm kind of getting long with it in the answer, but just with taking it so long to put the record out, like the record's been kind of done, and there's certain things that happened in the States where I was like, Monch, the record should come out now. Let's put that song out, because it goes with what's going on in the country. But I gotta commend Monch, because he wanted to have certain things done in place. He wanted to have the videos in place, because as you know, people's attention spans are short.
Yeah.
And I'm thankful that we waited to put it out when we did. So just to answer your question, the imagery going forward, I think from talking to Monch, I think he said we were going to try to turn the page and be like, okay, that's exorcism. Now, the baptism was there. So now there's a, more positive side, to the thing. So I'm hoping that's what's going to be the narrative going forward.
Yeah. Well, no, yeah, I appreciate hearing your perspective on it. I know it's, I know as a super group, obviously one person can't really explain the whole thing, especially when you're not bringing the lyricist into the conversation. But I do think it's a really cohesive and powerful just image as a whole, the musically and all the art and video that you put out with it. So I mean, it's a really amazing album that I really hope my listeners check out, and I'm looking forward to hearing more. Now we're recording this on Wednesday, but tomorrow, Thursday, the 26th, you have your first show, correct, with the band?
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
Can you tell the listeners a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we this is our first premiere performance as far as performing the album material. We've actually premiered at the Kennedy Center I think it's a couple years ago. They had like a grand opening for one of the new sectors opening up, and we were brought down there. But as far as performing like full album, not I won't say the full album, but the album material, like in its entire, mostly in its entirety. This is our first performance, and the crazy thing was we made this album to go out and perform. Like this album was made to play live, but unfortunately we had the pandemic, and things were stifled. So yeah, we're going to be playing at this place called Quantum, Brooklyn. It's in Brooklyn and Guanas, and we're looking forward to. We have another rehearsal, and we basically got to pack in what will take people months and weeks to rehearse for. We literally packing it in and today today, so it was kind of intense.
Yeah.
But luckily, Pharoahe, he's not working with no amateurs. Like we OG, we've been doing this. So luckily, hopefully everything is going to turn out. Hopefully, we have a good turnout as far as the performance and attendance. And yeah, looking forward to it. I think doors is at 9:30 p.m. and the show time is at 11. We got our good friend of ours, DJ Boogie Blind, which is Pharoahe's touring DJs. He's a legend in himself. Like Boogie Blind is the man. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, look we're going to be performing album material tomorrow in Brooklyn.
Awesome.
First time.
Well, yeah, I wish I could make it, but I'm hoping to make it to future shows. And congratulations on your Tiny Desk performance, by the way. That was amazing also. Yeah, again, the band is Th1rt3en. I hope more people check it out. Now, on a similar note to, I guess, like the sort of vibe that you guys set up for that album, you know, for Pharoahe kind of creating his own character as a rapper, how do you think that process relates to the way a comedian creates their character? I mean, do you feel like it's a similar process that mainly has to do with delivery and the words, or do you think that with a rapper there's more of an element of how you are perceived when people are meeting you in person? Because I know for a lot of rappers there's an element of protecting themselves, you know, when they're confronted at live shows, and that can you know, turn into dicey situations, or you know, they've come from a difficult upbringing. Like, do you think there is you think they're very similar in creating characters, or do you think there's any major differences that you see between them?
Well, you know, I'm not a comedian, so it's really hard to answer that question. But just as an artist myself, and just been for years trying to figure out my voice and my lane, which I work really hard, and I think I'm finally getting somewhere, which I'm thankful. It takes time. So with Monch, you know, this cat has been out, you know, since I was, you know what I'm saying, mad little, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know, and, you know, it was not that much of a difference, but just Pharoahe's been doing this for a minute. So, and he had this vision for, I think, a decade as far as like doing a rock hip hop band. And I've actually met Pharoahe through working with one of the artists that I played with named Black Milk. And Pharoahe was a guest MC on one of the songs. I think it's called Matrix. So I've known Pharoahe for over a decade personally. And I remember about 6 years ago, his manager, shout out to Guy. I'm not sure if you know Guy, but Guy is the man. And I remember Guy invited me and Marcus Machado. This is when before I moved to Nashville. I was you know, in New York, and we got invited to go to this. I think it was a restaurant right by, might have been in Fort Greene area, and Guy, you know, had said that, you know, he had this ideal of Pharoahe fusing rock and roll, and I guess they've been a fan of when they see my transition, you know, working from you know, going from hip hop and graduating from there to doing rock and roll, working with Jack White. So he thought I was the great fit, you know, being able to play that rock and roll, and also because of the Dilla background, like playing with Slum Village. Just to answer your question, I just think Pharoahe has always been ahead of his time. You know what I'm saying? With his wordplay. So he's always been a character himself. You know what I'm saying? You go back to the Organized Confusion, he was always a character, even with his wordplay, like so ahead of his time lyrically. You know what I'm saying? So I just made sense that I just think that maybe an alter ego, that, you know, he was an actor, you know what I'm saying, in another lifetime. And I just think, you know, just to speak for myself as an artist and just growing, you know, to you know, to build my own lane to get to where I'm at today, you know, I just feel like it wasn't far-fetched, because he's been doing this already. He's already been you know, an actor, sort of, I guess, actor,
Yeah.
you know, craft. So I mean, he basically wrote a lot of the treatments for the videos, like all the concepts. Like Pharoahe already had this stuff in his brain for over like a decade now. So, you know, it's one of those things where time, you know, gotta wait for the right time, and I just commend him for having that vision and it coming to pass. So I just think that it's definitely a similar, I guess, when you're trying to figure out, because I know as artists, even as comedians, you know, and even as an artist, when you grow up, you have people that you admire, right? And you go and copy, you know, study, and you may copy some things that they do, but then eventually you know that you got to develop your own. So I just feel like, you know, it took, you know, the comedians, it took them a while. They may have been inspired by, you know, the greats, you know, from Eddie Murphy, whoever they're inspired by, and the Bill Burrs or whoever it is out there, but then they had to figure out, okay, I don't want to be a knockoff. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, for myself, you just like, you got to figure out how can you come into your own lane. Luckily, Pharoahe came out at a time where you had to be original, authentic. You know, if you was caught biting or copying, you got dealt with, you got approached, and that's where I came from. I came up in that hip hop world, so you know, I always remember that mentality. Like, yo, you got to try to be authentic and find your voice. Otherwise, you know, I never wanted the people that I look up to look at me and be like, yo, this dude is a knockoff, or this dude is copied off me. So I just feel like, you know, I think hopefully that answers the question. Just looking for a way to be authentic and find a voice. And I believe, you know, Pharoahe had this vision and he stuck with it. and now we have now we be able to reap the benefits from the visionary from Pharaoh. Yep, pretty
Yeah,
much.
I mean, I feel like you're a good person to ask because, as far as drummers go, you're probably one of the best at demonstrating how to really find your voice. I know I've heard you talk a lot in interviews about how you ended up, the way you set up your kit is very unique and the way you got your sound is unique. And I've heard you talk a lot about that. So I don't want to beat that question to death, even though you already
No,
touched on it a little
it's
bit.
all good.
But
I mean, I don't mind answering it because it needs to be heard as much as possible.
well,
I
maybe
think,
I think my other question will kind of help get into it also because
yes, sir.
part of what I'm curious in that lane is that obviously working with Slum Village, one of your first big breaks, probably had to do a lot with your development of rhythmic ideas and your ability to have such good feel. And obviously, Jay Dilla is considered a big innovator on the side of feel in hip hop. But in general, I feel like hip hop has really changed the game for drummers and the kinds of feels that they use. So, is there anyone else in the realm of hip hop that you feel like has really influenced the way you conceptualize feel and rhythm?
Oh, that's a good question. Definitely RZA, because you know, just knowing about Dilla, like a lot of times, it's crazy to say this, but I didn't even realize he was a producer of some of those records in the beginning. Because it's just like we just I just got had a late pass, not a super late pass, but I remember hearing that glitchy type of stutter um, programming when Wu-Tang came out, and I was told that although rest in peace Jay Dilla, like he's definitely coined the sloppy, like making that into a thing. Um, from what I was told, I think RZA, the reason why some of the production came out a little unquantized because they didn't read the manual. They didn't know when those loops would come around, it would just they just left it. Not because they just didn't really know how to use. They use the equipment to the best of their ability. Like they just and that was the thing. But Dilla, he purposely was going for how when you heard old school drummers like Stubblefield and um man Bernard Purdy, when you heard those
Yeah.
old records, sometimes the drummers will make mistakes because we're not machines. We sometimes we humanly drag the beat, and because a lot of times I feel like I think because they been recorded to reel to tape, it wasn't no Pro Tools, so they just left the mistakes in. So if the drummer dragged the beat or they missed a cymbal or they was a little sloppy, it left. So Dilla wanted to from what I gathered, he wanted to leave the mistakes and sloppiness as far as like when you quantize a beat and unquantized. So basically, for people that don't understand the terminology, when you quantize a beat, the computer fixes the mistake. So if you play, if you're composing a beat and you make a mistake and you're behind, if you put the quantize on, it's going to fix it for you. But if you put unquantized on, that mistake that you made is left in there. So I would say RZA, um, definitely producers like DJ Premier, Pete Rock. I think because a lot of those guys in a Bomb Squad, when they were sampling Clyde Stubblefield and Jabo. So, when you hear those James Brown record and the break parts, sometimes there were a little sloppiness, but when that one came around, sometimes it was not all perfect. It was perfect. It wasn't a perfect loop. So, but definitely RZA was another person, and definitely the Bomb Squad. Shout out to Keith, was a good friend of mine, Keith Shockley and Hank. Those guys. Yeah, I definitely give them praise, and of course the later guys like Mad Lib's a good is a friend of mine. Um, but definitely Jay Dilla and like RZA.
Yeah,
Mm,
man.
yeah.
Yeah, like I said, you do such a great job of innovating on those sorts of techniques and really stretching like the boundaries of what feel can be. Is there anything else that you would consider like a foundational part of what has become your style?
Yeah, my style is definitely everything that inspired me from my gospel roots. Because I always tell people that I'm a genre bending drummer. I don't just play one genre. So I started. My beginners are church, of course. And then, I came up Pentecostal, Kojic, and, we were told not to listen to secular music, but I snuck. But anyway, I just felt like as a young lad, like, I feel like my talents were going to be bigger than gospel. So I started learning other genres like jazz, and hip hop. And I guess I would say, can you just repeat that question a little bit so I won't go too far off of it?
Just like what something that you would consider like an essential part of what has made your style what it is.
Yeah, so whoever I was checking out in the gospel drumming at the time, like Dana Davis is from Detroit and Michael Williams. Dana played with the Winans, so I wanted to listen to the top guys, and whoever was the top people in those different genres, I studied them. I watched and studied them, and then eventually I knew early that I was going to have to find, get a voice, because looking up to like cats like Benny Caliuta, who played with like Sting, Herbie Hancock, Zappa, Frank Zappa, the list goes on, was a big influence on me. Definitely Benny is one of my biggest influences. Shout out to Benny, and it's so bizarre that he's a good friend of mine. Like, one of my heroes is now looking up to me, telling me he loves what I do. And he was like, I remind them of when they came up, where everybody was authentic. They were looking for ways to have a voice. Although they were all listening to Tony Williams and certain drummers, they all still look for ways to get the identity. So whoever was playing in those different genres, I just look who was the best. Dave Weckl, Buddy Rich, Krupa, Omar King, Dennis Chambers, the list goes on.
Yeah.
Tony Williams. And then, you go to, like, I play reggae. I play Caribbean music. So I look to see who were those guys. So all those guys were definitely influenced. Steve Gadd, my bad. I cannot forget to mention Steve Gadd.
Yeah, man.
The reason why I got to say Steve Gadd, because he was a genre bending drummer. He didn't overplay, and that's one of the people that I wanted to pattern myself after. And then you come to the hip hop world. One of the first drummers that I seen was Questlove from the Roots, so I got to give him praise. So all those drummers helped influence my sound. I just maybe took like a tidbit or something, and then I brought all those influences to all combine into my sound, which I feel like my thing is what gave me my extra, I think, flavorings outside of my inspiration was just that church foundation. I don't think that I would have gotten the vibration to learn how to play from heart and soul and through the spirit if had I not had that church background. So I definitely credit like my mom, my dad, my grandparents. My church foundation really helped, and I feel like I'm playing with the anointed. I know people may not understand playing with the anointed. It's just the spirit and energy, and I think that's what I channel when I'm playing with any other styles, any of the groups that I play with. So yeah.
Yeah, man. I mean, like I said, the way you feel rhythm. I mean, I'm not a particularly religious guy, but I can tell you're feeling something big, and it comes from a place of really serious study. So I love kind of trying to learn more about feel from what you play. Glad to hear Vinny Colaiuta's learning, because Vinny Colaiuta is one of my favorites. Also, I'm a huge Frank Zappa nerd. So. That's good to hear. But I mean, yeah, man, it's really interesting to hear about where you kind of get your concept of music from, because I love your style so much. I know you're tight on time, so we got to wrap it up, but I'd love to pick your brain more eventually. But why don't you tell everyone where they should look out for you online, and what other upcoming releases they should look out for?
Yeah, thanks again, Brad, for having me on your platform. I really appreciate it. And but yeah, you can find me. I'm on all the social networks as Daru Jones. That's DARU Jones on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. My website is Rusic Records, which is my record label. That's RUSIC Records.com. And basically, I made music. I took the M off of music and I put R because my name is Daru. So I made it Rusic, and basically, when I started producing because I'm also a composer. I have this terminology called soul hop, which is, playing from the soul or producing from the soul, and the hop is from hip hop. So I wanted to have that same aggression as hip hop music, because as you know, hip hop is the hip hop that I grew up on was more aggressive and more, hardcore. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, hip hop has grown, and now you have the different styles of hip hop. You have the trap. But the hip hop that I grew up on, it was more, just aggressive. It was about drums. So, that's my style, and Rusic Records, that's my independent label, and I'm thankful. At the end of the day, I just want to continue to be the vessel, and I'm thankful to God for the gifts. And He's not. At the end of the day, it's not about me. It's about being a vessel and figuring out a way. How can I use my talent to spread love, positivity, regardless of what genre I'm playing with? Because sometimes, when you're out in the front line, you may not always be able to be in your comfort zone. Sometimes I have to go into, play music that, may not represent lyrically, what I stand for. But at the end of the day, I'm a vessel, and as long as I'm there, and when somebody leave, they feel encouraged, their day feels better. My job is done.
Yeah,
that's
man.
That's what I'm here for.
Well, yeah, man, the music makes me feel good. Again, I love it, and I can't wait to hear more.
Thank you.
So thank you again for doing this. I really appreciate it, man. It's an honor talking with you, and good luck at your first show with the new group.
Thanks, Brad. And I want to shout out Pete Rock. I'm also in Pete Rock and the Soul Brothers. That's another project. I just want to shout out Pete. Also, DMD Devised with Doug Wimmish, myself, and Marcus. But also, what we're talking about today is Project 13. Shout out to Pharoahe Monch, Marcus Machado. Also, Zoe Ellis, who was on the team, and Boogie Blind. We're thankful. Thanks everybody for supporting us for the record and vote for us. Hopefully, we'll keep y'all posted on some other endeavors. But get the album is out now. Shout out to Fat Beats. They put it out, and come to the show tomorrow and look out for other shows when things open it up. Bring us to your city. We're looking forward. And thanks a lot, Brad, for taking our time. And God bless. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, man, of course. Thank you.